My life's quiet had turned into something alive, a heavy shadow I lugged around everywhere. Never did I imagine I'd be the type to spill my heart to folks I don't know, but the plain threads of my daily routine have unraveled, and the truth, no matter how ugly, insists on being heard. I'm Emma, 45 years carved into my features, with a divorce tucked away like a book I rarely flip through, and a 19-year-old son, Tom, who's both my rock and the spark for the chaos swirling inside me. Up until not long ago, my world plodded along in a tiring, predictable beat: the cold, bright hallways of the ER where I pull night shifts as a nurse, the constant buzz of fatigue, and the heavy toll of other people's pain that sinks deep into my bones night after endless night. Outside those grueling hours, life felt like a worn-out vinyl record, stuck in a loop: work, crash for a few broken hours of sleep, get up, do it all again, like wandering through a never-ending personal darkness. But even in that gloomy haze, a spark of something brighter flickered from an unexpected place: competitive darts. It might sound downright ordinary, maybe even a bit silly, like something from old bars thick with cigarette smoke, but for me, the solid thwack of a dart hitting the board, the sharp focus it called for, became my way out. 2 years back, driven more by a need to fill the hollow quiet than any grand plan, I signed up for a local darts league. To my complete surprise, I wasn't just okay at it, I was really good enough to earn a spot in a regional tournament, a 3-day event in a rough-around-the-edges city, a 4-hour drive down the highway. For months, I practiced, the steady rhythm of throwing darts soothing my soul, the dream of that tournament a tiny, fiercely protected glow in my heart. For a brief, shining moment, it felt like I was rediscovering the woman I used to be before the divorce, before the heavy load of raising a kid alone settled on my shoulders. Still, the excitement of that hope was tangled up with the messy reality of being a mom. Tom, caught in the wild waves of his late teens, had a rebellious side that kept me on my toes, always watching, always tired. I couldn't shake the memory of the last time I left him alone for too long. His well-meaning but reckless buddy managed to wreck our garage in a botched attempt at fixing a car. That memory, paired with the upcoming tournament, left me in a bind. My solution? Take Tom along. We'd stay at a slightly run-down hotel near the tournament venue, one that had an indoor pool to keep a restless teenager entertained. That morning, before the first rays of sunlight even peeked over the horizon, I was already awake, my lower back nagging with that familiar dull ache, the kind that usually hits before a long shift, even though I had the day off. I dragged myself out of bed and did a few stiff stretches, wincing as my muscles protested, trying to shake off the weight of too many late nights and not enough rest. Then I shuffled down the hall to wake Tom, who was buried deep under a pile of blankets, clinging to their warmth like a bear in hibernation. It took some soft prodding and the bribe of a hotel breakfast buffet, complete with all the bacon and pastries he could want, to coax him out of his cozy cocoon. When he grumbled something about hoping they'd have pancakes, his voice still thick with sleep, I knew he was coming around, even if he was his usual teenage grouchy self. The hotel restaurant greeted us with its bland beige walls and soft, dim lighting, the kind that made everything feel a little muted, serving up the standard breakfast spread of eggs, pastries, and fruit. Tom, true to his muttered promise, loaded his plate with a towering stack of pancakes, drenching them in sticky syrup, each bite lighting up his face with a quiet, simple happiness that warmed my heart. I stuck to a practical omelette, packed with veggies and a little cheese, savoring the warmth of it on my tongue. We sat there, wrapped in a comfortable, mostly quiet companionship, the clink of forks and the low hum of other guests' conversations filling the space, a rare moment of normalcy that felt like a small, precious gift in the midst of our chaotic lives. The early morning air had been crisp as I'd tossed our bags into the car before dawn, the kind of chill that makes you pull your jacket a little tighter, even though the promise of a sunny day lingered on the horizon. My back had been complaining louder than usual, a reminder of too many hours on my feet and too few moments to just breathe. Waking Tom was like trying to rouse a sleeping bear. His room was a fortress of blankets, and I could barely make out the top of his messy hair peeking out. With a gentle shake and the magic words "hotel breakfast buffet," I finally got a response, his groggy mumble about pancakes telling me he was at least half awake and on board, even if he wasn't thrilled about the early start. Down in the hotel restaurant, the space felt like a bubble of calm, with its plain decor and warm, buttery smells wafting from the buffet line. Tom attacked his pancakes with the focus only a teenager can have for food, the syrup glistening as he cut through the stack, a little grin tugging at his lips with every bite, like he'd found a piece of joy in something so simple. I sipped my coffee, the steam curling up from the mug, and took slow bites of my omelette, the eggs fluffy and the veggies just crisp enough. We didn't talk much, but we didn't need to. The quiet between us was easy, familiar, like a warm hug. Those moments, just the two of us sharing a meal, felt like a rare treasure, a slice of ordinary life that I wanted to hold on to forever, especially after all the upheaval we'd been through lately. As I watched Tom across the table, his fork scraping the last of the syrup from his plate, I felt a quiet gratitude settle over me, a reminder that even in the mess of life, these small, shared moments could still feel like home. After breakfast, I asked Tom if there was anything he wanted to do before I headed to the darts hall. His eyes, usually guarded with that practiced teenage coolness, sparked with excitement. A specialty gaming store at a nearby mall, one he'd been talking about for weeks, apparently had a rare retro game he was dying to get. The idea of this little mission lit him up, and for that short moment, we were just a mom and her kid on a fun outing. The weight of our everyday struggles lifted, if only for a bit. Even in a life that often felt like a relentless grind, these moments, the quiet breakfast, the shared excitement, were like soft music in the background, proof that love and connection could still grow in the hardest times. They were reminders that, despite the struggles and the shadows I hadn't yet noticed creeping in, my love for this complicated boy was the steady guide keeping me moving forward. As we cruised down the highway toward the darts hall that morning, each mile marker passing by felt like a tiny victory, a step closer to rediscovering a piece of myself I thought I'd lost under the weight of endless responsibilities and bone-deep exhaustion. The tournament wasn't just about throwing darts or chasing a win, it was my way of quietly pushing back, a small act of defiance against a life that had started to feel like it belonged to everyone but me, a chance to hold on to something that sparked joy in my soul. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, especially when you let yourself hope for too much. I started the day on fire, my darts landing with a steady, satisfying thunk right where I aimed them, each throw fueling a rush of confidence. For a few shining hours, I was holding strong in third place, and the thought of actually winning, or at least landing a top spot, felt so close, so electric, it sent my heart racing with possibility. But then, like a shadow creeping in, the familiar haze of tiredness from my late-night shifts started to settle over me, heavy and relentless. My focus wavered, my hands began to tremble, betraying me at the worst moment. With a knot in my stomach and a sinking heart, I watched my game falter, each missed throw pulling me further down until I ended up in a disappointing 6th place, the thrill of the morning fading like a dream I couldn't hold on to. That drive to the darts hall wasn't just a trip across town, it was a journey toward a version of myself I hadn't seen in too long, a woman who could still chase something just for herself. The road stretched out before us, lined with budding spring trees and the hum of the car's engine, a steady reminder that I was moving toward something that felt like freedom. The tournament was my escape, a chance to step away from the endless cycle of work, bills, and parenting, to feel that spark of excitement that comes from doing something you love, something that's yours alone. But life, as it often does, had other plans, especially when I dared to let my guard down and dream too big. When I stepped into the hall, the air buzzing with chatter and the sharp clink of darts hitting boards, I felt alive, focused, like I was exactly where I was meant to be. My first few rounds were electric, each dart flew true, slicing through the air and landing with a satisfying thud, and for a while, I was right up there in third place, so close to a win I could almost taste it, my heart pounding with a mix of pride and adrenaline. But my body had other ideas. The late nights at work, those long shifts that left my eyes gritty and my muscles aching, started to catch up with me. My vision blurred at the edges, my hands shook just enough to throw off my aim, and no matter how hard I tried to hold it together, I could feel my game slipping away. With every miss, my heart sank a little deeper, and by the end, I was staring at a scoreboard that showed 6th place, a solid effort, sure, but a far cry from the podium I'd let myself imagine. As I packed up my darts and headed back to the car, the weight of that disappointment settled over me, heavy but familiar, like an old coat I couldn't quite shake off. But even in that letdown, there was a flicker of something else, a reminder that I'd shown up, that I'd fought for a piece of myself, and that maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. My teammate Sophie, whose grit I always admired, won the championship trophy. Her victory was a bright spot, and I cheered for her, my own letdown pushed aside for a moment. After the awards, a bunch of us, buzzing with the day's energy and camaraderie, decided to keep the celebration going at a little bar across from the hotel. The invite was hard to resist. The bar had a warm, lively vibe, a perfect remedy for my earlier disappointment. Laughter came easy, stories flowed, and glasses clinked. Me, who's usually careful about drinking, got caught up in the fun, one glass of wine turning into 2, then 4. The edges of my tiredness blurred, replaced by a warm, slightly reckless glow. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I finally crossed the street back to the hotel, the chilly night air snapping me awake. The hotel hallway was eerily quiet. I slipped into our room as softly as I could. Tom was fast asleep, the soft, flickering light of the TV painting his young face in a gentle glow. A rush of deep, tender love for him hit me hard. I shut his door quietly and slipped into the bathroom to change into my pajamas. Back in my bed, I pulled the thin hotel sheets over me, their coolness a small comfort. I tried to watch the late-night movie on my TV, but sleep stayed just out of reach. My mind, stirred up by wine and the day's ups and downs, raced through it all, the quick joy of our mall trip, the sting of the tournament, the easy laughter at the bar. Around 4 a.m., when I was finally teetering on the edge of sleep, a sound from Tom's room caught my ear, a rustle of sheets, a faint stirring. My heart gave a funny little jump. I propped myself up, listening closely, the soft, steady sound of his blanket moving, the quiet sighs of someone deep in sleep, or maybe not quite. A picture of his face, lit by the TV's glow, so young and open, flashed in my mind. Then another thought, sharp and unwanted, slipped in, whispering if he was ever going to, well, you know. Was it the wine still buzzing through me, warming my veins? Or maybe the deep, gnawing loneliness that's been my quiet shadow for so long? Or could it have been something uglier, something hiding in the dark corners of my mind, just waiting for me to slip? I couldn't stand the guessing any longer. The words tumbled out before I could stop them, a shaky whisper in the hush before dawn, need any help with that? The silence that followed was so heavy I wondered if I'd only dreamed I spoke. I held my breath, my thoughts scrambling for an escape. If he says nothing, if he ignores it, I can pretend it was just sleep talk, a figment of a dream. Then his voice came, rough with sleep, clear and terrifying, yes. That one word hung between our rooms, sharp and final, like a door slamming shut. It was as if a lever had been pulled, smashing a boundary I hadn't even known was there. All the ifs and shoulds, the careful walls of what's right and my role as a mom, they just collapsed, giving way to a strange, cold sense that this was always going to happen. I felt oddly removed, like I was floating above myself, watching this unfold like a stranger to my own life. Everything felt unreal, like I'd stepped outside my own skin, leaving behind all the rules, the expectations, everything I thought I was. My legs felt heavy, like they weren't mine, as I got up. I moved toward his door, each step loud in the thick quiet. The room glowed faintly with the TV's shifting light, throwing twisted shadows that flickered on the walls like restless ghosts. I stopped by his bed. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might break through my chest, a wild, frantic beat against the deep silence. I could feel the warmth coming off him, a pull that seemed to tug me closer, like gravity. I hesitated, my hand hovering over his blanket, a silent, awful question hanging in the air. Then, slowly, with a carefulness that felt both foreign and horribly familiar, I reached out. I tugged the blanket down, just a bit. He was lying there, his eyes wide in the dim light, a mix of shock and something else, something I couldn't read, that twisted my stomach. His hand was still there, curled around himself, a stark, undeniable sign of what I'd stumbled into, what I'd chosen to interrupt. I stood there, frozen for what felt like forever, just staring at him, my mind wrestling with the impossible scene in front of me. It was like looking at a stranger, a version of my Tom I'd never met, never let myself imagine, a jarring blend of the boy I knew and someone terrifyingly new. The lines, the sacred ones that should never blur, were fading, mother and something else, something unthinkable. I felt a pull, a deep, almost overwhelming urge to reach out, to cross that final, forbidden line. My fingers shook as I stretched out my hand, gently lifting his away. His skin was warm, slightly slick under my touch, sending a shiver through me that was half horror, half something new and terrifying. "Let me," I whispered, my voice raw and strange to my own ears. "Let me take care of that." My eyes drifted down, taking in the shape of him, the familiar lines of my son now mixed with the startling form of a young man. I could see the signs of his arousal, the clear changes that marked him growing up, changes I was now, somehow, part of. I leaned closer, the air in the small room growing heavy, thick with things we weren't saying, with desires that shouldn't exist. With that same horrified distance, I watched my hand move, my fingers tracing slow, careful lines along him. It was soft but firm under my touch, a dizzying, wrong kind of thrill. My breath came faster, my body betraying me with a shameful warmth that answered this forbidden closeness. I saw the first glint of pre-cum, and a dark, hungry urge grabbed me. I leaned in, my tongue brushing against him, tasting the sharp, salty shock of it, a jolt of raw electricity rushing through me. He flinched at the touch, a soft, quick gasp slipping out. "Want me to keep going?" I whispered again, my voice thick, heavy with a desire I didn't recognize, didn't want to fight. He nodded, his eyes dark and wide, locked on mine, a silent, desperate need in them. I lowered my head again, my lips grazing his skin, the feeling sending a blaze of heat through me. Taking him in my mouth, the taste, the feel, the sheer rawness of it sent a shiver of twisted pleasure through me, so intense it almost hurt. His hands found my hair, first a gentle tug, then firmer. "If you pull," I murmured, my voice low and strange, "you might like what comes next." He tugged, hesitant at first, then harder, and a fresh wave of raw, almost brutal desire tore through me. "Harder?" I gasped, and he did. I gripped him tighter, the feelings overwhelming, a wild storm of pleasure and guilt, desire and shame. It was like being swept up in a hurricane, thrown around by forces I couldn't control, forces I'd let loose from the darkest parts of myself. I felt him tense, his body arching, trembling as he reached his peak. His release hit hard, a warm rush that filled my mouth, a taste that was both painfully familiar and utterly, devastatingly wrong. Then, a heavy, suffocating silence fell. We lay there, still tangled together in the faint, flickering light, our breaths uneven, mixing in the air. The room felt thick with unspoken feelings, with the crushing weight of what we'd done. "We can't keep doing this," I whispered at last, my voice barely there, a weak attempt to grab onto some piece of normal, of sanity. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. The words felt empty, like a promise I already knew, deep down, I couldn't, and maybe didn't want to, keep. We tried to talk, to make sense of the chaos we'd unleashed, but words fell short. The feelings were too raw, too tangled, too painfully, beautifully messy. And yet, like moths to a flame, we moved toward each other again, the desire flaring up, impossible and unstoppable, like a fire catching dry grass. He asked me, his voice low and urgent, and I found myself completely, terrifyingly unable to say no. The guilt was still there, a quiet nag in the back of my mind, but it was drowned out by the roaring tide of this new, monstrous desire. My God, a small, detached part of me thought, he's ready again. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if this was a good idea, if it was even possible. Then my mind, set free, started racing, chasing other thoughts, other possibilities. The boundaries, those once clear, untouchable lines that separated mother from son, right from wrong, weren't just fuzzy or warped, they'd completely vanished. It felt like we were swept up in a storm, a wild, chaotic swirl of desires we weren't supposed to have, caught in a feverish dance of joy tangled with shame, forever tied by a secret that would shape who we were from now on. Afterward, the room felt heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on us, thick with emotions we couldn't voice, weighed down by the enormity of what we'd done. Deep down, in the broken pieces of my conscience, I knew it was wrong, wrong in every moral, ethical sense, no question about it. But the guilt, that smothering, heavy blanket, didn't stick around as long as I expected. It hit me in cold, gut-twisting waves, but then it slipped away, leaving behind this strange, almost eerie spark of excitement, a thrill that felt all wrong but undeniable. I kept whispering to myself, this can't happen again. It's got to stop here. I tried to talk sense into my head, to find some way to make peace with what we'd done, to square it with who I was supposed to be as a mother, as a person. But the truth, the scary, almost freeing truth, was that those lines weren't just blurred, they were gone, wiped out completely. And the more I turned it over in my mind, the clearer it became, with a shiver that felt both cold and electric, that I didn't want to put them back. It was like carrying a dark, heady secret, a dangerous thrill humming under the surface of our ordinary lives. The shame and guilt were there, of course, skulking in the corners of my mind, but they were starting to fade, drowned out by this strange, almost addictive rush of power, of crossing lines together, of a desire so raw it felt like it was part of the earth itself. I knew, with a certainty that scared me as much as it thrilled me, that this wasn't over. It was just the start of something messy, something risky, something that set my heart racing with its danger and allure. My mind started wandering to other ideas, other ways this new, terrifying connection between us could unfold. I caught myself daydreaming about the next time, imagining how it might feel, what it might look like. I pictured new ways to reach out, to explore, to break every rule and taboo we'd ever known, smashing them to pieces without looking back. That's when the darker thoughts started sneaking in, uninvited but impossible to ignore, stirring a mix of fear and a shameful, electric excitement, ideas that made my pulse quicken, my skin prickle, and my mind question who I even was anymore. I started wondering, what if we did it again, but somewhere new? What if we pushed even further, testing every limit? What if I'd not only stared into the darkness but had chosen to step right into it, heart pounding, eager for more? The Emma I used to be, the mom who always did the right thing, the nurse who cared for everyone, the woman who knew the difference between right and wrong, she was gone, like a shadow from a life I didn't live anymore. In her place was someone new, someone I didn't know but who was undeniably me, raw and real. That night wasn't the end, it was just the start of a journey into a murky, shadowy place where the only guide was the fierce, unstoppable pull of a desire I wasn't supposed to want. And the scariest part? I wasn't sure I wanted to turn back.